Hey guys, Zach here. And I know, it's still a while before most of you are probably going back to school, but I've decided to make this video anyway, so you guys will have some time to make these crafts before you actually go back to school. Also, don't worry if you're not a Therian, you can still 100% do these crafts. These are only ideas and a starting point. You can feel free to venture off and do your own thing. There is no one right way to do it, so feel free to add your own little quirks and designs. Also, I designed these crafts to be subtle, so if you don't want people knowing you're a Therian, they probably won't know. So if you don't want people knowing you're a Therian, these crafts should be in the clear.
Alrighty, with that out of the way, let's customize a notebook. As you may have seen me doing in the background, I've placed a piece of paper over my notebook. And all you've got to do to secure this is tape it down. For right now, we're not going to put any tape on where we're going to be drawing because the marker won't show up as good if you do. But once we're done with the art, we will come back to that. I prefer to just use regular old packing tape. Alright, once you've got your piece of paper taped down, we can start designing our notebook.
If you really like this design, you can absolutely copy it. This design is free to use for everyone.
As you can probably see in the background, we're just drawing out some nice little vines. I did them very curly and whimsical and all over the place. But feel free to do them however you choose. After that, we're going to go back in with the same color Sharpie and go over all the lines we did to add more depth to the vines. And while we're at it, we're also going to add little stems coming off the vines so we can add some leaves later. Now, take a slightly lighter color green Sharpie and start drawing little leaves on all the vines. I'm just doing pretty basic leaves with little lines on them, but feel free to get as complex or simple as you'd like. Next, to decorate the top of the notebook, I'm going to scribble in some Sharpie. I decided I wanted to make it look scribbly on purpose, but if you don't like that, you can make it a box as well. Next, I'm going to go in with a white paint marker and add some paw prints. If you don't have a white paint marker, that's okay. You could go in with a different colored Sharpie or just leave blank spots for you to add them later. Personally, the way I draw paw prints is I draw 3 circles, 1 on top and 2 connecting at the bottom. And then I just draw little dots for the paw pads. I also feel that the first 2 outer paw pads should be lower than the top 2 ones. I feel like that makes it look more realistic. Next, I'm going to draw the Therian symbol. Of course, this is completely optional. If you're not a Therian, you do not have to draw it. Or on the other hand, if you're other paw or other link or other kin, you can draw that symbol as well. This is your notebook and you should customize it to whatever makes you feel the most happy. And then we're going to finish it right up with some more paw prints. I feel that when you're doing the paw prints, if you make one leaning one way and then one below it leaning the other way, it looks best. So for this one, I actually did the same thing but flipped it in reverse so it looks extra cool. Basically, the top ones are pointing away from each other and the bottom ones are pointing towards each other. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is draw a fox, but apologies in advance, I didn't realize I was off camera for part of this. So just imagine I'm drawing a fox there. Woo, so cool, I'm such a good artist, yay! So I'm drawing a curled up sleeping fox. Now I'm not a Therian myself, but I just think foxes look cool, so I drew a fox. But if you have a different Theriotype, feel free to draw yours, or if you're not a Therian at all, draw whatever makes you happy. Again, I'm so sorry you guys can't see this. I promise in just a few seconds you'll be able to see me doing it. It's just really silly right now. There we go. I finally realized that I'm supposed to be doing this on camera. Anywho, this is me coloring in the fox. I decided to do the outline in a dark orange and start adding lighter orange on the inside. I did, however, do the face in dark orange because I think it makes it pop out more, and it really makes you focus on the face. And after that, optionally, I decided to add little fur markings in the dark orange. I feel this adds a lot more detail and really makes the fox look a little more realistic. After that, I'm coloring the paws black. But I did run into a slight issue right here around the nose because the nose is also black, so it kind of makes it hard to see the nose. I did find a solution to this. I went ahead and took my white paint marker from before, and I just drew around the nose and added little nostrils too while I was at it, and I feel like that fixed it pretty well. I also added little lines for the toes on the paws as well. And after that, all that's left to do is add your information on the front. Like I said, I don't go to school anymore, so I will not be using this notebook. but I did add my name and a random subject just as an example. And would you look at that, a lovely notebook. And while I did write math homework on the front, this could really be used for anything. Things like sketchbooks or a Therian journal all could use this method. This last step is completely optional, but if you want to do it, it'll make it last a lot longer in the long run. But I added some layers of tape on top just for durability and also to make it slightly water resistant. And when I say water resistant, I do not mean waterproof. I mean resistant. Water could still probably get in, but it'd be a lot less damage than if it had nothing.
Now on to our second craft. This craft is a keychain that looks like a cat mask. To start out, take a piece of cardboard and a Sharpie and start sketching out a cat face. It just needs to be an outline. It doesn't need a lot of detail yet because all this is going to be covered up. Once you're happy with the sketch, you can take a pair of scissors and start cutting out the cat. Once you have this, we can move on to step number 2. Since this is going to be a keychain that will probably be in your backpack, there's a chance rain might get on it. To make it water resistant, we're going to cover it in tape. Now this won't make it waterproof, it'll only make it water resistant. That means it'll be a little harder for rain to get in, but it will not be able to be submerged. For this method to work as best as possible, be sure to cover both front and back of the cat. I find packing tape works the best for this, but any tape will do. After that, we're going to draw on our eyes with Sharpie. Technically this part is optional, but it gives it a lot more depth. Next, we're going to cut out the eyes. I personally used a box cutter for this because I am an adult and I know how to use it properly. If you're younger, please use scissors or get an adult to help you. Box cutters are very sharp and are not a toy, and you could seriously injure yourself if you do it the wrong way. So please, please, please get an adult to help you. Our next step in this craft is felting. We're just going to take our hot glue gun and cover half of the cat in hot glue. Then we're going to take a piece of felt that is much bigger than the size of the cat, and we're just going to flop it right on there. Once that part is stuck on there, we can go ahead and flip it over and peel back the felt a little bit and do the other half. Once you have that, we're going to flip it over and start trimming away the excess felt.
When you're cutting the felt, do not trim straight along the edge, leave a little bit left over. Trust me, we're going to need it for the next step. Once you're finished trimming, apply a line of hot glue onto the felt that we left over. Once you've got your hot glue on, then we're going to fold over the felt onto the back of the keychain. Once finished, the front of the keychain should look like this. This next part is the most tricky. Using a pair of scissors, cut a line in the inside of the eyes. After that, apply a little bit of hot glue onto the eyes and then push them from the front inwards. This will help give it a more seamless look on the front of the keychain. But if you find this process too difficult, you can just cut little holes where the eyes should be. Once you've done that, the front should look like this. This next bit is optional, but I'm using a polymer clay nose to attach to the keychain. If you don't have any polymer clay, feel free to use felt or even just draw one on with Sharpie. Speaking of Sharpie, now it's time to draw on the mouth. I'm using a permanent black Sharpie to do this, but you can also use acrylic paint. But it does take a lot longer to dry. Once you've finished adding all your details, we can move on to the next step. Now it's time to add the elastic. Take a small piece of elastic and glue it together in a loop. Then apply some hot glue to the back of the keychain. Glue on the elastic with the loop part facing outwards. Next, take a piece of felt big enough to cover the entire keychain. Just like we glued on the front felt, we're going to glue on the back felt the same way. Once you've done that, it should look like this. Next, we're going to trim the rest of the felt. Unlike the beginning where we left some extra, we're just going to cut it all the way around. Be extra careful not to cut the elastic loop. Unfortunately, I messed up and my elastic came undone. But it was a blessing in disguise because now it's easier to put on the keychain. I originally was just going to feed it through the normal way, but this is a bit easier. I just fixed it by gluing it back on when I was done. This time I decided to add a piece of felt for stability so it wouldn't come undone again. The next and final step is to do the eyes. I just use a Sharpie to color them in, add some pupils. But if you want, you can also cut out the eyes and leave them open like a fake mask. I also used a paint marker to add some highlights, and then I also decided to draw on a Therian symbol.
Again, I'm not a Therian, but I just thought it would be fun. Here you can see me just doing some touch-ups, adding a little extra detail. And after that, you're done and can attach it to your backpack. Alrighty, the final tutorial is going to be how to make a candy single. I know this isn't exactly exclusive to back to school, but I still think it's a fun idea. And candy is always a fun accessory. Alrighty, let's get into it. The total number of beads, including charms, letters, and pony beads, should be 30 altogether. But if you have a slightly smaller or bigger wrist, I would size up or down by 2. To start, I'm going to get all my letters. I personally chose to spell out the word Therian, again for all my Therian viewers. And for this bracelet, I'm using cord elastic, and we're just going to start putting on our letters. A common way people mess up the letters is they put them on backwards by accident, so while you're making this, make sure your letters are facing the right way and they're not being messed up in some way. When I put on letters, I don't cut the elastic yet, I leave it on the roll. This way the beads won't all fall off if you accidentally drop it. But now that we do have our letters on, I am actually going to go ahead and cut this now. I find it a lot easier to tie the knot when I have way more elastic than I actually need. Once you've done that, you can start putting your beads on in an alternating pattern from green to black. Of course, you can use any colors you want, but that's just the colors I'm using today. Once you get to the final bead, we're going to add on our charm. If you don't have a charm, just add one color in between that doesn't match the colors around it, so it keeps the pattern. And after that, we're going to tie it off. I prefer to do 3 or 4 knots. It may make the knot more bulky, but it's worth it to not have a bracelet break. I've personally never had one break, so I can safely say it works. The final step is to cut off the extra tails. And then boom, we have our candy single. This is a pretty cool bracelet if I do say so myself. And honestly, candy is such a good accessory to help find new Therian friends. And with that, that's the end of this tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.